Thank you very much, Sharon. It's great to be here with everyone. And there's a Hebrew word that some of you may know. It's used to say goodbye. It's called lehit ra'ot. And in lehit ra'ot, it's called a hifil. It's got a lot of extraneous letters, but the root is ro'eh, which means to see. And Va-EIRA is from the same root as lehit ra'ot. It means to appear. Va-EIRA or Va-EIRA means, and God appeared to Moses. So in this passage, this is a continuation of Shemot, where God is making his presence known to Moses, and God is indicating to Moses that he will be instrumental in the liberation of the people. In ancient times, they believed that anything that happened in the world was the result of God's will. And therefore, it was determined that Moses could not have done this. This was too miraculous. It must have been done by God, and Moses was the emissary of God, or the avatar of God, and God was responsible. Today, we know that many people have the ability to be a source of blessing, to liberate others, to leave their comfort zone, and to be able to accomplish great things. But in this passage, it says, Va-EIRA Adonai, God appeared, which seemed to be the case when Moses led the people to freedom. And so we read this passage and we celebrate the fact that we Jews consider a rabbi rouser to be someone worthy of emulation, someone that we look up to, someone who challenged the status quo, stood up to Pharaoh, spoke out against injustice, and protected people that ostensibly were different than he was. He was in a palace and they were slaves. So we could say that when we do something good, when we do something selfless to help others, that's when God appears. That's what this passage is all about. Well, let me share with you a little bit about this passage and how it applies today. So in this passage, Moses was told that the people should be set free, but Moses was a little reluctant because he thought that the people weren't really ready to be rescued. And he complained to God that these people, they don't seem like they have the mindset to even want to be set free. They're kind of stuck in a rut. They're used to being slaves, and why would they even bother listening to me? They're too beaten down by the circumstances that they're under to listen to me. And Moses is very reluctant, and he has to be encouraged by God to accept his role. This is the opposite of many people today who crave power, and they don't even have the qualities that warrant them to be in a position of power, but they crave it anyway. And we've seen that throughout this nation and throughout history. Moses is the opposite. Moses is one who is said he didn't seek out power at all. According to American history, George Washington was the same way. According to historians and according to the legend around George Washington, he did not want to be the first president. They suggested that he be president. He said, no, choose somebody else. I'm done. I've fought for our country. I'm ready to settle down and retire on the farm. And then they recruited him. It was considered that he was the right person for the job because he did not seek power. The people who want to be president, who are ambitious, people look at them askance and think that their desire for power will be an impediment. And so Moses perhaps started this long tradition of choosing leaders not because they want and crave power, but because they're good people and they will do good things for others and they will actually serve the public. So in this passage, Moses has to be convinced and cajoled, and he also is a stutterer, so he's not very sure of himself. And so God assures him, don't worry about it. Aaron will be there with you and he will help you out, and he can be your spokesman if you're not able to articulate clearly. And so the two of them really work together, which is also a good lesson that no one person really should be responsible for leading an entire group. It's always good to surround yourself with other people who are competent and loyal and good and know what they're doing. So this passage has various aspects of it that are helpful to us. Pharaoh, of course, we know the story. It says Pharaoh's heart was hardened. The Torah doesn't really go into it very much other than to say that God is the one that hardened his heart. And that might seem rather, I guess, heartless if you're going to ascribe to God hardening Pharaoh's heart so that he refuses to let the people go, which inflicts plagues upon the people. And then the people of Egypt suffer because God is playing around with Pharaoh's heart. It doesn't seem all that fair to Pharaoh. But you could say, and I would suggest that when we read this passage, there's a group of people that go unnoticed. Who are these people? They're the Egyptian public. The Egyptian public is silent. So the Jews are being enslaved and they're being treated horribly. The Egyptian people have nothing to say about it. Pharaoh just says, I'm not letting the people go, and the people are silent. Later on, Egypt starts suffering plagues. The people of Egypt are silent. They don't say anything, and the plagues continue. I think that what we see in this passage is something that we have to read between the lines. The people of Egypt brought about their own disaster because of their silence. They refused to speak up. They let others determine their fate, and therefore their country and their nation was destroyed, and the people of Egypt suffered. Lesson being that we, again, need to speak up and not just go along with what our country is doing, right or wrong, but as Jews, we're called upon to be the conscience of humanity. And with that, I will open it up to anybody who'd like to share any thoughts about the passage or about what's going on in the world today. Do we have any takers?
Go ahead, Ginny.
Okay. It's very apropos what's happening today. People are not speaking up. You have a party who is united in not speaking up, not acknowledging different things that are going on, i.e. Santos and other things. So I think the passage is it's very appropriate and telling that because you don't speak up and people don't speak up, do we have, will we have a future? What will happen? I think it's important to speak up, important to be an activist and to join groups and fight back. If we don't fight back, we are responsible for whatever happens.
Very good. Very good. It was well said by Abraham Joshua Heschel, who said, in a democracy, some are guilty and all are responsible. So you agree with Rabbi Heschel, one of the great philosophers and prophets of our time. And I think that's what the passage is saying, without actually saying a word about it. It never mentions the people of Egypt.
Right.
But they are the silent majority. And you're 100% correct. Today, we have political parties that are allowing a guy like Santos to be in power, or a guy like Trump to threaten to take over the government. And we see some really bad things happening, but people don't want to speak up against their party or against their country, sometimes against their religion. And we as Jews should not hesitate to speak out even against faults within our own religion. That's what the high holidays are all about.
Right.
It's the ability to critique ourselves as individuals, as a Jewish community, as a nation. Those people and those groups that are able to self-evaluate and critically examine where they're gone wrong and try to change course, they will do very well. Those people who lack the ability of introspection and just go along with the flow and can't correct their wayward path, they're in for a rough ride. And that's what we see in Egypt. It is good to follow procedures and to have a process. It's also good not to be enslaved by the procedures and the process, and to have some mechanism to enact justice. And what the Torah is all about is that tzedek tzedek tirdof, which means righteousness, righteousness shall you pursue. And sometimes there's a dichotomy between the righteous thing to do and following process. And is there some process that we can use in order to create a just result? Sometimes the situation is so bad that it cries out for a solution, even though there might not be a process in place, but justice needs to be exacted. And I would say this is one of those types of cases. However, there is a process, it's called impeachment. You could potentially impeach somebody because they got elected under false pretense. I don't think that it makes any sense to allow people to be elected based on a lie and not be able to change anything and not be able to prevent them from taking office when they were only elected because they lied. There should be a procedure, and if there isn't, the procedure should be changed. But there are election laws about campaign finance, about what you can say, about having to have ads that are accurate. And I think we should pursue all of those. And I think that would drive out anybody who's lying. If we don't, we're just going to encourage people to tell a pack of lies to get elected. And then after they get elected, say, ha, it's too late. But you have to wonder why the opponents of Santos were asleep at the switch and failed to be able to uncover some things that were obviously erroneous. Somebody was not doing their homework, that's for darn sure. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sharon. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.